In this video, I'm showing you the build clearing the hardest content in the game without using any uniques except for the crone. I clear a Nightmare 100 dungeon using my head instead of my hand. I'm going to talk about a bunch of different gear setups that you can choose, and I'm answering all your questions from the previous video. And if you haven't seen the first video for this guide, I'll leave the link underneath the video. Now let's get into it. I took the time to throw together separate builds for you guys depending on what you're trying to do. Ultimate Stormclaw is one of my published builds, as well as my Poison Stormclaw. You'll be able to find both of those on my Mobalytics page. However, I'm not going to be publishing my other builds. You'll have to find them in my Mobalytics profile. So if you go to any of my Mobalytics builds, you can click on my profile by clicking the name Screamheart at the top of a build, or just click on my profile link below the video. There you can find a legendary only version of the build, as well as a pure DPS and a pure tank build. And when I say pure, it doesn't mean it doesn't have any damage. It just means it's going to have a lot of survivability. Don't be afraid to mix and match between the different builds based on your needs. Now, since I'm answering every question you might have had and you have no reason to comment anymore, do me a favor and leave a comment anyways, and hit that like button. So I wanted to show you guys that you can clear Lilith without having any of the unique items except for Greystaff of the Crone. I am, however, going to show you a trick halfway through where you can throw Godslayer on after the first time she flies up in order to get the 60% damage bonus at the time that it actually matters. And same thing, another tip for you guys, if you're using Petrify at the beginning, you're actually going to waste it. You want to save it for after she flies up and lands the first time because you want to burst her down in the second part of the fight. So let's go into the fight. Okay, she should be flying now. And then we throw the helmet on, and then we burst her down. Now you can definitely burst her down there. Oh, I was about to take the helmet off. You can definitely burst her down without doing that. I just wanted to show you guys that trick at the same time. And the second part of the fight is super duper easy. Definitely don't need any extra damage here. I'll just let my lightning bolts finish her off. Oh, I almost didn't jump off there. Alright, and then you just gotta smack her a few more times and she does. Easy peasy. By the way, I just thought it was worth mentioning, the elixir that I had on is a shadow resistance, so you can actually get a lot more damage than that. And for the 5 people who are going to be like, but you had Godslayer on! I do not have it on now, and I'm going to go ahead and do this one more time, just for you guys. I think that was actually faster. This is not the most comfortable experience of my life, but I sacrifice for you guys. Now, if you want to support the channel, the best way is to use my link and get a factor meal. Or when I say factor meal, I mean get 1 week's worth of factor meals at least. Try it out. You'll get a 50% discount and you'll definitely help me out. Worst case scenario, you get 1 week's worth of meals and you cancel it and then you never have to get them again. Just had a hair drop on my face. Uh-oh, I'm gonna go bald from this. Ooh, this might be a sticky situation. Oh god, I can't move. I can't move. Ah. Much harder. Oh, oh. I had to hit escape on that one. Oh, shit. I don't know how I opened my map, but you know, things happen. Oh god, holding my arm up is the hardest part of this. I'm a weak man right now. Holy. Alright, I'm gonna change hands. Ugh. Oh shit, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to control this the right directions. Uh-oh, 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 heal through it. Nope, can't do that hand. You guys are like, this is a mess and a half, isn't it? Hey, the important thing is we're clearing a tier 100 with our face, okay? That's what we came here for. Oh, those are prisoners that we're supposed to be getting. Almost forgot about them. Come on, man. Trying to get me killed, have me get prisoners. I know I have a big forehead, but I'm running out of real estate here. This is probably like the worst dungeon to be doing this on because one of those snipes end up hitting me, I'm in trouble. And I'm not exactly super mobile right now. Whew. Give the armor a little break here. Heal through this damage. Great thing about being able to heal when you attack, huh? Uh-oh. 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 Yeah. Alright, I can probably take my hand down now. Try and heal through all this damage. And that's how you clear a tier 100 dungeon with your face. So I put together some useful information for you guys. I made a little list here. So first off, Erida's Inexorable Will is great for AoE, not for bossing. That's this ring here. That's the new ring that came in. And you can get this ring from doing Varshan. You can mix and match most of these unique items, as well as with legendary gear. You need Grey Staff of the Crone to do this build, but you can clear every bit of content in the game with just legendary items. You might notice that your attack speed caps at 100, but if you pull your amulet off, you're going to see that you can still get your attack speed to 100, and then put rapid back on, and you'll see that your attacks are actually faster. I'm not 100% sure why that is, but I think that basic skills might not have an attack speed cap. If you're curious what elixirs are best with this build, I think Lucky Hit is the best, but Critical Strike Chance and attack speed elixirs are also great. And as far as incense goes, just use what you need in order to meet certain benchmarks. You could use one to get a little more armor, so you can meet the armor cap. You can use one for stats, so that you can hit a bonus in your Paragon boards. And if you don't need either of those, there are other options as well. Now, I made this little chart here to try and show you guys where different uniques fall based off of what they do for the builds. So for example, you've got Melted Heart of Selig in the top right. That means that it is mostly a survivability item. All of the ones that go through the middle here are not particularly leaning towards AoE or single target. And really the only item that seems mostly single target focused is the Fists of Fate. The reason these can be useful for bosses is because it can stagger bosses extremely quickly. However, I'm not a fan of using this on Lilith. Right in the middle, we have Harlequin Crest. It's probably the most balanced item in the game. It's super good in every way. Helps your DPS, helps your survivability. It doesn't have to be for AoE or for single target. It works for everything. I've got Hunter Zenith leaning towards the survivability side. This is an option that you can use early as a placeholder. And it also is a great item to give you extra survivability because you can get 12% damage reduction from it. Not to mention, this can cause your debilitating roar to not actually go on cooldown when you use it. Flicker Step are great boots that you can use in most builds. For this build, the only reason I put them on this chart is because there is an alternative of this where you can run Metamorphosis instead of your Prey on the Weak or instead of your Sanguine Brace. And that allows you to use Flicker Step, and then you can use Metamorphosis as you are unstoppable. Of course, that means you got to change your Keystone passive over to Ursine Strength. Mad Wolf's Glee is a decent DPS item, but with Mad Wolf's Glee, you aren't going to want to use this in difficult stuff because the damage reduction on it is not that great. I should probably make this a little bigger for you guys. Godslayer is a great DPS option, and it's my second choice to Harlequin Crest. It leans a little bit on the AoE side, but it's good for all types of damage. Tybalt's Will is my recommended pants. This can always be replaced by legendary pants if you need more survivability, but the damage on this is hard to pass up. It's 40% damage multiplier. Over on this left side, you can see between AoE and DPS, we've got the Tempest Roar, and we've got X-Falls, and we've got the Inexorable Force, and we have Endurial's Visage. Now, the only time I'd recommend Tempest Roar is if you're also running X-Falls, because this allows you to apply poison with your Storm Strike as well. Pairing this ring with the Inexorable Force to pull enemies together can also be really useful, especially if you're running Flicker Step and you can reduce your ult cooldown. And I haven't gotten Endurial's Visage yet, but I've had a lot of people tell me they like it with the build, and it's obvious because it synergizes really well. And this is on the AoE side because it has a little AoE Nova that it causes when you attack. Now, one of the items I didn't mention was Temerity. Temerity doesn't really seem to have a specific spot on this board, and also I haven't really found a way to incorporate it in the build that feels worthwhile. Because it takes up the same spot as Tybalt's Will, which is just a huge damage multiplier, and it doesn't have many good defensive stats. In fact, it only has maximum health. It can be a little bit awkward to find a way to make this work on the build, which is unfortunate because it synergizes really well. It's possible that I might incorporate it somehow later, but for now I'm not recommending it. Now, once Abattoir of Zir comes out, we're probably going to be needing to incorporate the Melted Heart of Seelig amulet, but we'll see what happens. Now, if we do end up using the Melted Heart of Seelig when Abattoir of Zir comes out, then we're going to be moving our Rapid down in place of Runeworker's Conduit, and we'll be going into our Paragon boards and removing any excess points from Electrocution. We can still get the bonus on Electrocution from our Bad Omen, but it won't be worth dumping the extra points into anymore. Added one more tip on here. Paragon board order matters. So every board that you add increases the cost of the bonuses on your rare nodes by 90 stat points. So make sure on Mobalytics you're looking at the order of the boards and putting them on in the correct order. So you guys had a few questions on the last video. So I wanted to point out a couple things. One, so right now I don't have Harlequin Crest on. So if we go to our abilities, you can see I have no points into Earth Spike. Now, if I start attacking, you can see that the Earth Spike is popping up that 60% of the time that we talked about in the previous video, just by me doing basic attacks. And it can hit enemies from far away, which is pretty cool. So you don't need any points into Earth Spike in order to get the benefits there. Now, as far as putting points into it in order to try and make it stronger, I don't know if I would say that the points are worth putting into it. The second one here gives you only a 10% chance to give a stun, which would only be really useful for bossing. And even then it's only 10%, which is pretty small. You have to think that we're casting this 60% of the time, and 60% of that time, it's 10% of the time. So in reality, it's a pretty small number. Now for the Fierce Earth Spike, fortify 8% of your maximum life whenever Earth Spike damages enemies who are stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. The reason why I don't care about this is because we're using Sanguine Brace, and Sanguine Brace is giving us Fortify when we're killing enemies anyways. And the only time that this would be useful is on bosses to give us more Fortify. Well, we're not going to get that benefit on bosses because we can't stun a boss except for when we fill up the meter. So this becomes irrelevant. Another thing that people were talking about is they were saying, well, hey, my attack power is lower than on the previous build. That's because if you go into your abilities and we change Nature's Fury to Ursine Strength, you can see that I instantly go up to 17,700. Okay, so I'm going to pull that back off. 17,700 is what we had. Oh, wrong one. Now, when I have a barrier, I'm supposed to get that same amount of multiplicative damage, which I do, except you'll notice I don't have Tybalt's on, so it won't make the numbers confusing. When I barrier, there's no attack power change. Okay, but we are getting that attack power bonus from Conceited. I've tested this many times. A good way to test this is to watch our lightning bolts. So we're doing 81,000, 229,000, 229,000. And if we pop this, 339,000, 339,000. And you can see again, 101,000 versus the 81,000, which is exactly the amount that we would expect to come up. So another useful tip, and I want to give a shout out to the commenters that put it on my previous video, but if you go to your options and then you go to your controls, you can uncheck the combine move interact basic skill slot, And what this allows you to do is to bind your basic attack to something different than your left click. That allows you to left click while moving, and then you can use the basic attack with a different key. I still think that controller is smoother, but I tried it here, and it does seem like it's a little bit better, but I highly recommend controller because it feels much more natural. I wanted to point out a couple of easy ways to improve your damage in this build. The main reason you would do this is if you're trying to kill a boss and you're not meeting your damage needed. But to be honest, most of the time you're not going to need this. However, if you do, you can pull out 4 points from heightened senses and put 3 points into resonance up here. And that's going to give you a 6% damage increase, and that is actually an 18% damage increase each time you use your Earthen Bulwark and then go back into using your claw. Another way you can improve your damage is you can pull the Keeper glyph out here, and you can throw in the Fulminate glyph. And then if you have Fulminate there, this is a dexterity glyph, so you're going to want to pull the points out here, and then you're going to set it up just like that. And technically you could actually pull the 2 points here out and go put them into the damaged spots elsewhere, and that would probably be better. Also keep in mind that when you're doing bosses, you don't need all the extra survivability, so you can pull any armor nodes out, and you can pull any extra health nodes out if you have any. So I've got some up here, for example, and you can put those into things like nature magic damage, into critical strike damage, vulnerable damage. Basically, these points are very malleable and you can move them around based on what you need. Now, when Abattoir of Zir comes out, we're probably going to want more survivability, and there's a lot of ways that we're going to be able to adjust that in the build if we need it. So for one, enemy levels are going to be getting higher, which means we'll need more armor. That means we'll probably end up using Disobedience in the chest piece again. But we're not for sure about that because we have to see how it goes. We could also solve that problem using elixirs or using essence. But how we get the damage reduction back if we have to increase the armor and lose our aspect of might is we can actually go into our paragons, and we have a lot of options to increase our survivability. Of course, this is going to mean we reduce our damage, but there are options. So one of the things, for example, is that we can run Werewolf Glyph instead of Earth and Sky. If we do that, we may have to adjust some stuff to try and make sure we're getting our bonuses, or maybe we could just replace Electrocution and then we won't mess with our bonuses. But then we're losing a 20% damage multiplier, so we probably won't do that one. Another real easy one that we can do is we can throw Undaunted into our board. I would probably throw that here instead of Spirit, because it's real easy to get the intelligence we need without using extra points. If I did that, I would probably also end up grabbing Spiritual Power, just because coming in from this side ends up being a more worthwhile approach. And then we would probably replace our Keeper with the Protector Glyph. This is a 10% damage reduction when we have a barrier. Another thing we might potentially do is in our skill tree, we'll probably pull points out of Defiance, and we could throw those into our Earthen Bulwark so that we get better barriers. And we could get that last point for the Bulwark from Debilitating Roar, because we'll have enough Fortify with our Bulwark. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time hitting the correct bonuses. I decided to test the Vampiric Power Infection. So I went into Lilith, and I took her from 100% health down to 75% health. And these first clips here are for using Infection, and the second group of clips are for not using anything in that slot. And I started with the 3 on each, because you have to die in order to test on Lilith. And I didn't want to, do repair costs forever. But I did 3 of each, and it came out that not using Infection was faster. And I was like, well, that must be wrong. So I went and I did 4 more of each. So I did 7 total on each. And overall, the Infection did worse than not having anything on. That means that Infection is either just really terrible and I'm within the margin of error, or Infection is straight up making me weaker. One way or the other, it's definitely not worth one of my Vampiric slots. Just for reference, doing it without Infection, the slowest one is faster than the middle one for using Infection. And the fastest with Infection is equal to the middle one for not using Infection. I'm not including the actual builds in this video. My previous video shows the ultimate Stormclaw, and you can find all my written guides on Mobalytics. Look for the link below the video, and check out the written guides for all the details. And I'll see you guys on my Twitch stream. Daddy Druid out.